think that's probably
Can we come to order, please? I believe they're ready to start. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, and my name is Derek Henry, and I have the pleasure of serving as the mayor of Daytona Beach. I want to thank everyone assembled at the table and everyone who is here with us in the audience for joining us. This, I believe, is a very important assemblage of personalities who have a lot more information and knowledge about law enforcement, and so I just want to frame part of the purpose that we're here is to help create a tool of dialogue and to have the support of those who are assembled at this table to help us in the First Step Shelter initiative. And so with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague on the City Commission, an attorney, and a person who's a lot more knowledgeable about law than myself, Attorney Aaron Delgado.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank everyone for coming here today. This was a group that we were able to get together in a week's notice, so certainly we didn't mean to be exclusive of anyone. There are a lot of people who would love to be here, who we would have loved to have, and a lot of people who adjusted their schedule to be able to be here tonight. But what we thought we would do was put together a group of law enforcement experts and attorneys and judges to address some of the issues with chronic adult homelessness through the lens of the legal system. Instead of addressing it as a social justice issue, we thought we would address it as a criminal justice issue. And what we found is, I think when you look at it as a criminal justice issue, you're able to come to consensus on a lot of things, and you're able to zero in very quickly on some real costs. And so the result is that you see everyone from the state attorney to the public defender and defense attorneys, law enforcement, judges who are able to be in agreement on something. And that's a pretty rare thing when you have a group of personalities and interests as diverse as this group could be, who are able to agree on some tenets, which is, I think, what we have here today. So I'd like to go around and introduce everyone that's here. And again, this is not meant to be exclusive. It was the people we were able to wrangle here on short notice, and we thank them all for coming. But start down at that row and work our way around.
Okay, I'm Dan Schaefer. I'm with the Public Defender's Office.
I'm Bill Partington. I'm mayor of the city of Ormond Beach. I've been practicing criminal law for the last 20 years as well.
I'm Jakari Young. I am the Deputy Police Chief for Daytona Beach PD.
I'm Heather Post, Volusia County Councilwoman, and also long history in law enforcement. I started in February '92.
Hi, I'm Judge Bell Schuman, and first of all, looking around this table, I want to thank everybody for being here too. There are literally hundreds of years of experience in the criminal justice field, both law enforcement and law, so thank you very much for being here. I also wanted you to know that there are a couple of folks who sent their regrets here tonight that were unable to be here. New Smyrna Beach Chief Mike Coffin and Senior Judge, Circuit Judge Dave Beck. I am a county court judge. I've been a county court judge for 12 years in the criminal division. Prior to that, I was Assistant Attorney General representing the state in criminal appeals for 21 years. So all of my 33 years of legal experience is in the criminal justice system. Been working on this project for some time, as many of you know, because of the great impact that the lack of a shelter has on our criminal justice system. So thank you all for being here, and with that, I can't help myself.
That's the problem. No lawyer can say anything in less than like 10,000 words. And
That's right.
This 18-page draft would have been about 4,000 pages if we hadn't had a time constraint. Aaron Delgado, I'm a city commissioner for the city of Daytona Beach. I'm also a criminal defense attorney. I'm board certified as an expert in criminal trial law, and I've been doing criminal defense exclusively for the last 13 years. I'm also the president of the local chapter of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. And our mayor, Derek Henry.
I'm sorry. I'm Derek Henry, president of the First Step Shelter and mayor of Daytona Beach.
Now I know why they charge by the hour, attorneys. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood.
Ron Wright, South Daytona Police Chief.
Melissa Clark with the State Attorney's Office.
R.J. Larizzi, your elected state attorney.
So with that in mind, what I thought I would do is just kind of give a brief synopsis of what we what we did was, starting with the request of the mayor to put together a group to look at, as I said, homelessness from a criminal justice perspective. What we did was we put together, and it'll be available for anyone who wants it, kind of a tentative report on what we think the issues are and how we think those issues are addressed through the criminal justice system. So as kind of an overview, I'll give you a brief overview, and then what I'll do is I'll ask the different kind of stakeholders to kind of say how they feel that a shelter would benefit their interests, whether it's law enforcement or prosecution or defense or the bench and judiciary. Our idea is that the premise of a centrally located come-as-you-are shelter is a criminal justice issue, and the reason that we look at it that way is several. First, our court systems are clogged with people who are being prosecuted for crimes that are overwhelmingly committed by people who are homeless. So it's everything from trespassing to open containers of alcohol, things like that. And when you go through and you look at the numbers, you'll see that we spend a tremendous amount of money jailing and prosecuting these people, not just in actual out-of-pocket expenses, but also the time that law enforcement is spent doing that. They're not protecting the citizens from other crimes. So if you have to take the time to put 2 officers on a scene to deal with someone with an open container, that's 2 less officers patrolling. That ends up to be thousands and thousands of dollars. And what we found when we looked at it is millions of dollars were being spent. So right there alone, we were able to identify about 50 people who were arrested more than 20 times over 3 years at a cost of several $million to the county. So right there is your money for a shelter to fund it and operate it. The other issue is one of federal civil rights. And we look at civil rights not just from the perspective of the people who would be prosecuted, but also the civil rights of everyone in the community. Business owners, homeowners, residents, they all have rights. And without the correct set of laws and the correct procedures, we can't protect everyone's rights. And that includes people who are accused of crimes. So there is federal case law that talks about what a city has to have before it can enforce its rules and laws and ordinances that affect predominantly homeless people. And we've provided in our draft some quotes from the main cases, and the main case is a case called Pottinger. It's a decision from a federal appellate court, which would be binding on us. And it essentially says that until you have a come-as-you-are central shelter, you cannot successfully arrest and prosecute people for this wide category of petty offenses that are commonly associated with, with being homeless. So that means 2 things. That means that the police officers run the risk of making an illegal arrest that would not be enforceable in a court of law. The second is that the city or the municipality or the county runs a risk of being subject to a civil rights lawsuit. And that's a real cost. It costs money to settle. It costs money to insure. As we walk around the corner, there's a room called risk management for a reason. We don't generally want to wait until the crash occurs to put in the stop sign. We don't want to wait until we're sued to think about liability. So those were some of the reasons that we analyzed it as a criminal justice issue. And when you looked at it that way, I think the conclusions we reached were pretty clear. Then the other thing we looked at is what tools and solutions can law enforcement and lawyers offer? Well, lawyers can offer rules, ordinances, draft of things that we need to get the system going, and law enforcement can offer training, ways of dealing with the situation, ways of identifying who benefits, who should be put in a shelter, who shouldn't be put in a shelter, and also the law enforcement is at the end up to the prosecution. So the prosecution, working with the judges and the defense attorneys, can put together a system to divert people from being cycled through the jail in kind of a seemingly endless loop to say, listen, we're going to divert you to a non-jail setting where you can receive the services and things that you need. And if you do that, then we can talk about reducing your charges, dismissing your charges, doing all these other things. And so that will clear up the court system for the state attorney to prosecute people who really deserve to be prosecuted for serious crimes. It will free up the defense attorneys to focus on other offenses. It'll free up the resource of the public defender. It'll free up the courts. And Judge Schuman right now runs a docket that deals with a lot of people who this kind of jail diversion would focus on. So that's why we thought by identifying these shareholders and getting everyone in a room together, we could come up with some solutions and some tools. And ultimately, the goal was for all of us to have some tools to empower Mayor Henry and the First Step program to go out and raise the money that they need to build this shelter, and to give them a kind of, at least from my perspective, a pledge and a commitment that the people sitting in this room will be willing to meet again to work on things to help this First Step program along and come to fruition and come to maturity, and not just die on the vine as things have had a tendency of doing in the last couple of years. So that's kind of the thought that went into it, and that was, I think, the guiding principle that led us to be here today. So if there's, maybe we'll start with law enforcement, and if anyone wants to comment on some of the law enforcement benefits they perceive, and then we'll talk to the lawyers last, since we talk too much.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. First, I want to tell you guys thank you for putting this document together, Judge. Really very, very helpful. First of all, I want to tell you that now being the sheriff, this is a countywide problem. And I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, and I don't care, but the county manager should be at this table. Because as the sheriff, I can tell you, I have been out in the land, I have been in DeBarry, and there are folks living throughout the entire county in the woods. So to bury your head in the sand and say this doesn't exist, doesn't work. The second thing is Commissioner White and Mr. Chisholm and I took a trip to Pinellas County to see how that model, that law enforcement model, worked. And the only knock on it was, after the first couple years, funding dried up from all the other cities, and they shifted the entire burden onto the sheriff. It was a great concept. They were able to enforce the ordinances. It's better than anything that we have in place now. From a historical perspective, I've been the chief here 10 years, and we have been to more meetings and passed more documents and not done anything to address the problem. And I'm hoping that this time we're really going to do that. But that Pinellas County model, and Mr. Chisholm was there, again, Commissioner White was there, there are a lot of good takeaways from that that can help alleviate some of the issues that we're facing. And I hope that that's what we follow that.
And Aaron, I think, just so all you folks understand how that system worked in Pinellas, I talked to the sheriff of Pinellas County today about the program and the state attorney over there. What happens is when an individual is approached by law enforcement, and they're given the option, if they're violating an ordinance, it could be panhandling, it could be disorderly conduct, disorderly intoxication, whatever it is, it's a minor offense, a nonviolent offense, they can be given the option of you go to the shelter or you go to jail. So they're either going to go one place or the other. And I believe that you've identified property by the jail, so that it's right there, so the officers wouldn't have to go like from one end of the county to the other. And if something happened while they're going there, whatever, they've got the jail option still available to them. But so, it wouldn't be in your backyard, which, let's face it, a lot of folks don't want this kind of a facility next door to them. So we'd alleviate that problem by the location. Additionally, this program it has to take them as they are. I mean, in other words, if they are intoxicated, as long as they're not violent, they can't be refused. And it's different from some other shelters in that they actually stay there, they get counseling, there's medical services provided, there's mental health counseling, there's job placement counseling for these folks. Now, they either take advantage of it or they don't. But the one key I want everybody to understand is that they're not getting a walk. They get a choice. But that if they opt to go to jail, they go to jail, and then they go through the system and they go through the process. But y'all have seen what happens with that for a long time now. Folks go to jail, they get out, they don't get any services or any help, and guess what? They're either back in your neighborhood or on your business steps or running your customers off. I mean, so this is an effort to try and address some of that. And at the same time, I'll tell you, everybody at this table is committed to public safety. Nobody wants this to be, we want this to be enhance the safety of your neighborhoods, your business communities, so that folks are coming and they're not they're not getting run off by some of the byproducts of the problems with homeless folks. And at the same time, we may only reach 10 or 20 or 30% of them ultimately, but that's better than what's happening now. So just so you understand the mechanics of it, that's how it would work. Now, of course, Judge Schuman's talked about diversion. There might be homeless folks who say no to begin with, and then they get in jail and maybe they'll want to go to the shelter. Maybe they'll hear about it. The state attorney's office, you know, we're open to considering, you know, ways to help these folks get on their feet if they want to. But we're also committed, and I want to be clear about this, to prosecuting folks that are a danger to you and your communities, or who are what we call these habitual misdemeanor offenders who just reject help and continue to break the law. So we're trying to strike a balance between helping the homeless folks, creating an alternative, and at the same time making sure that safety of your communities is maintained and hopefully enhanced. So I hope that helps you understand a little more what we're trying to do.
Chief Wright, do you have?
I just want to reiterate what Sheriff Chitwood said and what State Attorney Larissa said and what my colleagues have told me. This is a county-wide problem. If you don't think you've got homeless, then you're dealing with the invisible homeless. You've got the visible and you've got the invisible. I guarantee you, and most of the wooded areas throughout this county are encampments of homeless folk. And we need to join forces together, just like we're doing right now, and do something either to help these people, or if they don't want the help, incarcerate the people, but at least give us the tools to provide alternate sources rather than trying to think of reasons to put them in jail because our folks can't use the parks, they can't use the libraries, or whatever because of the problem we have. And we've been toying around with this for many years. There's a homeless guy in South Daytona I know. He's been homeless for 10 years. So, I mean, please, I'm just imploring you guys, let's get the ball rolling and really do something this time.
Yeah.
I'll just piggyback a little bit off of what the others have already said. I do also agree that homelessness is a countywide problem, but I will also say that it especially hits home right here in Daytona Beach, hence the location of this meeting. I think anyone that has sat in or attended a commission meeting, any commission meeting over the past 3 years, you can see that homelessness has been a hot topic right here in this city over the past 3 years. Anyone that bore witness to what took place in front of our tag office right down the street about a year ago, you can see the mass population of the homeless right here in the city of Daytona Beach and what we're dealing with. And I am elated that we are at this table moving forward with this shelter project, because I think it will help out tremendously. Because I think in law enforcement we do bear the brunt of dealing with the homelessness and and it has never been our goal to violate the rights of the homeless. We work within the parameters that are set before us, also realizing that we also have to protect the best interest of the business owners in this area. So I think I'm just elated that we're finally at this table and moving forward with this project.
Councilwoman Post?
So I was talking to Judge Schuman. I just got back from Tallahassee yesterday, and I actually went up and toured the Kearney Center up there, which is a homeless shelter up there. Very different, actually, than the Pinellas shelter. But I think the point is that we've got people that are actually involved now. We've got people that are looking at options, looking at all of the different, the whole perception here, and really trying to do something to put some sort of plan in place. So I'm very much looking forward to that. On the LEO side of the coin, I can tell you from experience there, I've talked with each of the police chiefs, and I know I've chatted with Sheriff Chitwood about this and Chief Capri about this, but to me it's also very important if we're building a shelter, we need to ensure that if we're doing this over here, that at the same time, we're also creating and getting back our standards for the quality of life in the area, and that we're maintaining them. So those people that Mr. Larissa spoke about, that that it might be habitual and just don't feel like enforcing or following the law, are impeding on the quality of life of our citizens, and we have a responsibility to ensure that they have an excellent quality of life as well. So it's very important for me to know that we also, while we're doing this over here, that we have the backing of law enforcement, and on that side that we are going to have those standards, set those standards, and maintain them as well at the same time, and then I think it'll be very effectual.
So that's kind of the view from the people that are on the front lines, that are dealing with the day-to-day enforcement, and they're the ones who will have to deal with whatever rules and laws get passed, and they're the ones who need the tools and the solutions to deal with the challenges. And I recognize these are people that are going to be dealing with problems at 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. So you've just heard from your experts and your people that we trust to protect us when we're sleeping. That's what they need. They're here at this table because they need tools that we think we can provide for them. On the other side of the prosecution coin, or the law enforcement coin, is kind of the defense coin, and in the middle is the judiciary that's kind of calling the balls and strikes. So I think let's maybe hear from the representatives from the Public Defender's Office, and Mr. Partington, I'll put us in there too, since we're...
Yeah, Aaron, I want to say that homelessness is a criminal justice issue, and it's also a social justice issue. And I also belong to the Faith Organization, which is a social justice organization, which has pushed hard for years for this shelter. And what we're saying here tonight is we're not denying that it's a social problem. We're not denying it's a social justice issue. We're not pushing away the other parts of the system that have been pushing for this shelter for so long. We're trying to bring to bear the criminal justice system and our point of view also. Because a big part of this shelter, the shelter is not only jail diversion. There'll be other ways to get there. But a big part of it will be jail diversion. And that's what we know about. All of us have been to first appearance hearings in the morning and seen the same people shuffle in and shuffle out who are in jail for little more than their life circumstance. And it is cruel. And none of us want it. And we've been working for years to try to do something about it. And now is the time, please, to get this done. And I hope maybe the criminal justice team can put it over the top.
As far as the city of Ormond Beach, looking at it from a municipal perspective, two things really come to mind. One is we realize it's a community-wide problem, and I believe my commission, based on discussions that I've heard, recognizes the homeless issue and wants to be a good community partner in the resolution of it. And so being able to participate in something like this, and ultimately in hopefully the First Step program, I think is going to be the answer that we've all been looking for. I believe the second thing is we want to be in compliance with the law at all times. When you're operating as a city, you're the leaders. It's important that you set the example. And there's different kinds of laws. There's ordinances that elected officials pass. There's statutes that come from our legislature. And then there's case law, which Pottinger is. And case law is just as valid a law as any of the other types, and it needs to be complied with. And right now, I believe, really, we're not in compliance with Pottinger. All of the efforts of this committee and ultimately First Step will bring us into compliance, and that's what we're looking to do. I've been to first appearances as well. You see the same people over and over again. Even odd situations where a judge will give somebody, say, 6 days with credit for whatever, and the homeless person will say, should I get 9? Because they want those couple extra days until their disability check comes in, and then they'll be good for 2 weeks. Then they go stand at the exact same spot at the 7-Eleven, get arrested by the exact same officer, and they're back in again. And the report illustrates that, talking about the number of people who get arrested over and over again and the multiple dollars that costs. Another thing from the city perspective is the funding. We don't want to be funding the issue forever. I think I can sell to my commission maybe a 3 to 5 year commitment to get it off the ground. But as the county jail starts to realize those savings, hopefully those would be transferred to either the shelter or the grant money that is available, that does flow into county, that's currently not funding a shelter like this, could be transferred over once statistically it's been proven how effective it is, and I believe it will be. So that's really, from the city perspective, as past president of the Volusia League of Cities and now being involved in the Florida League of Cities, a few years ago, maybe 4 years ago, I think Commissioner White, I rode with the Volusia League, Commissioner White and her husband over to Safe Harbor, and we toured the facility. And like you said, Sheriff, it's a fantastic facility. They do amazing work. That sheriff deserves a huge amount of credit for shouldering that burden initially. He had help for a few years, and then, like you said, he was kind of left in the dust there. But I think if we do it correctly, it will be successful. We can learn from their mistakes, and it's gonna take that initial effort, which I hope this committee will allow us to get there.
I mean, and there's no secret that the purpose of what we're doing is to empower the mayor and the First Step program to go and get funding to do this from the county and from the other municipalities. I mean, that's part of the goal. Is Daytona has a safe zone, so we are, arguably Pottinger compliant, but we want other cities to be that way, and we ultimately want to empower the First Step program to get money from the other municipalities and from the county. So I mean, that's why we did this today. I mean, there's a reason that Mr. Schaefer said cruel, because that's what the case law talks about. I mean, the 8th Amendment prohibits cruel and unusual punishment. And when you read the Pottinger decision, that's what the courts were talking about. They were saying you can't punish people for this category of, life-sustaining conduct in public because it violates our 8th Amendment prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. So you've heard from the law enforcement, you've heard from the defense attorneys and from the public defenders who deal with this day in, day out. They're the ones who represent the indigent people who can't afford private counsel. So they're the ones who see it day in, day out, and they're the ones who have limited resources that every person that gets defended, every person who's entitled to an attorney gets one. And so we're depleting that resource at tremendous cost, and it's a valuable resource. There are people in jail who are not being seen because our resources are being used elsewhere. So in the middle of the fulcrum is the judicial system, and I'd like to ask Judge Schuman to kind of weigh in on that from the judicial perspective.
Okay, thank you. Well, they've talked a little bit about first appearance. Under the rules of criminal procedure, every person arrested in Florida has a right to go before a judge within 24 hours of being arrested. So 365 days a year, Christmas, weekends, every day of the year, there is a judge at first appearance who's seeing all the people who have been arrested in the preceding 24 hours. Often, the number of people varies. I guess, when we have special events and people are busier and more people in town, that goes up a bit, but it's anywhere from 50 people to 100 people. And approximately 10% of those people, day in and day out, are people who are arrested for trespass, open container, these sort of petty offenses that would be diverted into a shelter. So that's really what got me started in this project, is seeing the futility of over and over again these same individuals being arrested many, many times, serve a few days in jail, no services, and then right back out to be arrested again. Sometimes if you're out there for a week at a time, you'll see the same person arrested 2 or 3 times within the same week. It's just Makes no sense at all. The jail was looking at the number of, they were doing a study about recidivism, and they realized that 53 people had been arrested more than 20 times in the last 3 years, since 2013. So, the highest person of that group of 53 had been arrested 74 times, or an average of twice a month. So, there's a cost that is associated with arresting these 53 people thousands of times. That cost works out to the time of the people here, not only the time in the jail, which is $86 a day to just be in the jail, but also the time for the police to transport, for court time, for all of that. Just those 53 people have cost $5 million in the last 3 years. So there's a tremendous cost to the criminal justice system. You mentioned about funding. I think that the First Step Shelter has been in discussion with some charities, Catholic charities and some other possible folks that may run the shelter, and they're quite confident that in a fairly brief amount of time they would be able to assist with some of those operational costs. Also, the thing about several people have mentioned Pinellas County. In Pinellas County, the sheriff runs the jail. That's not what happens here. So the difference between, in Pinellas County, $100 a day to be in the jail and about $20 a day to be in a shelter is the reason why the sheriff opened and continues to run that jail, because of the tremendous cost savings. And each year when he goes back to the Pinellas County Board and asks them to fund it, he says, well, you can either give me $10 million more so that I can expand the jail at that cost, or we can continue to run this shelter. So there is some cost savings. There are some also the time and the effort and the human cost. Truly, Dan was talking about it's just a wasteful system. If you can divert people into a shelter where they can receive case management and apply for benefits that they may be eligible for, get on their feet, that can solve the underlying issue of why they're homeless in the first place. So it actually saves lives. Once an adequate, they've been talking about Pottinger, and I would just say that once an adequate shelter does exist, that come as you are, 24/7, takes people at 2 o'clock in the morning, whenever, a law enforcement officer can give homeless people who have committed petty offenses the option of either going to shelter or the jail, as Mr. Larissa has said. So that answers the question of how do people get out there? A lot of people are going to get out there in the backseat of a patrol car. And he also answered the question of why would they stay there? The answer to that is so that they can participate in the case management that's there. They have a safe place to be for 24 hours a day, and they can participate in jail diversion programs that result in the case being dismissed. So there are answers here that are from the criminal justice system, and that's why it has to be centrally located. And I know, Sheriff, that you can comment on how that might be useful. I know you don't run the jail, but nevertheless, as a law enforcement tool, any cost savings has got to help the system. Would you agree?
Absolutely, Judge. Absolutely.
And do you see your officers utilizing?
Absolutely.
Right. So
All of us, Judge, all of us. I mean, coming from the municipal perspective in Daytona Beach and looking at it from the county perspective, I don't think there's a law enforcement officer out there that can take advantage of that.
And could I say one more thing? I know I can hear the criticism that's going to come here. It doesn't solve the homelessness problem. You have to have permanent housing for people, and that's true. But for so long, perfect has been the enemy of good here, because we can't solve every facet of the homeless problem at once. Doesn't mean that we can't get started by having the shelter.
As lawyers, we work all the time with the concept of precedent. We have a federal system that sets the floor, and we have a state government that can give us greater rights. And the same thing is true here. We're talking about setting a floor of a basic level that we need to be to avoid liability, to have ordinances that we can enforce. But there's nothing that says we can't have bigger, better, brighter. We can and we should. We should aspire to more. But this is talking about the ground level base floor.
Exactly. The shelter needs a back door, is what you're saying.
Right.
I mean,
right. There would be more There will be more to be done after this, but we've got to do this first.
Right. America's Rubik's Cube problem is homelessness. You're right. We're not going to solve this. It's not a panacea. However, we're not doing anything. So we got to get started, as you said, and it just is on the ground floor. And let's get it up and let's get the ball rolling here.
So with that in mind, what we'd like to do is, we've circulated a kind of a draft among everybody. What we'd like to do is kind of finalize that this evening and tomorrow, and then present Mayor Henry with our final kind of report that will have some, our kind of a summary of what we talked about here, the case law, the decisions that you need. It'll have some of the facts and statistics in an appendix. So you'll have, and it's available to anyone who wants it, you'll have a copy of this report, and you'll have the support of everyone here in going forward to the county or the municipalities and explaining how this can be a benefit looked at from the criminal justice. So I think you have the support of everyone in this room for that mission. Right?
Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Right. Yep. So, I mean, it seems a unanimous support for this idea from people on all sides of what's normally a very contentious group of people. So, Mayor, with that in mind, now is the time. This is the place. You've heard unconditional support from us, and so we want to hand that to you now and ask you to run the ball home and finish it.
Okay.
And if there were
No big deal. No big deal.
if
Yeah,
there were
we're
details in the future
Mm-hmm.
that you need, like working out the agreement or a training protocol, I'm sure the sheriff could assist with that. There's other things that we can do that once it is underway, we stand ready to help with.
Yeah, you just have to ask.
Okay. Well, I guess on behalf of First Step Shelter, which is the umbrella through which we want to bring this to full fruition and full life. Certainly, we don't want to give off the impression that this is the city of Daytona Beach.
Right.
Certainly, the city of Daytona Beach has no interest in running a shelter, but we certainly have an interest in solving and addressing the homeless issue. And so with that being said, I humbly accept the report and will utilize it to our full benefit. The objective here is to use this as an additional tool as it relates to the philosophy and the reasoning for a shelter. I mean, we have certainly as a community stated that we needed a shelter, but very often that's come under the auspices of simply of mental health, and we're doing it for mental health. Certainly that continues to be an issue, and it's certainly the objective of First Step Shelter is to provide those services, not only mental health, physical health, emotional health, and in some ways even spiritual health. But in this case, as a community, we recognize that it's a necessary tool. So with that said, I will do my best to use it to communicate a positive message of helping our community to come forth and bring to life what we hope will be a shelter 24 hours that will help to graduate people from the scourge of homelessness. So thank you.
Any final thoughts before we close out this?
Mr. Delgado, how does the public get a copy of that report?
We'll
We'll be happy to.
be happy to provide you a copy.
Do you have a comment?
I would just like to say, so as someone from the county, in dealing with Mayor Henry and various people from all these different committees and everything that have been working on the homeless issue and with law enforcement, I'm truly excited to see the collaboration that is really forming, and to see that all these different agencies and people can work together to actually find a solution, take action, and hopefully start getting some things done. So I'd like to just say I'm very proud of everyone involved for that fact alone, not necessarily the meat of everything that we'll work out eventually, but that fact alone. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks
you
everyone
very
for
much.
joining us. We appreciate it.
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I say, please? Reverend Joel, Cowboy out of Grafton. Now, I am homeless. I live in the woods. I'm not going to say exactly where because it's in both their jurisdictions.
So we're not really set up to take questions today. So
But I do want you all to know that I have the utmost respect for you. Judge Schuman, there is a lot of people out there that respect you a lot. A lot, yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it.